ended up with my many trials and travails of being involved with doing AAA baseball here in New Orleans for the New Orleans Zephyrs. And my life changed profoundly when that occurred. And the primary reason why my life changed profoundly is the gentleman that joins us here tonight. Interestingly enough, Michael, you
This
and I
is a good
started this
story.
show.
I like this. I'm excited.
We started this show on the North Shore in
Yeah.
2008, if you recall.
Right.
And right at the beginning when we started it, I think he was the second guest we ever had. And here we are,
I think so.
12 years later. So it took a little while to book him for a return engagement. That's all I'm saying.
Well, he's got so many kids and grandkids to deal with, now. This isn't the same guy,
Yeah, something like that.
I know
But
it.
he helped change my life profoundly.
Yes, he did.
And I love him dearly because he made all the difference in the world in my life. But he happened to be a good baseball player, played in the majors for 9 years, and became the very first manager of our New Orleans Zephyrs, and became a mentor for me and a guy that I will call my friend for eternity. Great to welcome CB, Chris Bando, to the show. Chris, great to have you with us. Welcome, and I'm glad to hear your voice again.
Great to be with you guys. It's a blast from the past, and so good to hear you, Kenny, and Michael. It seems like I never left you guys. Time goes so quickly, but I'm very grateful for our friendships, and we can pick up where we left off.
No question.
That's the spiritual thing, though, Ken. When we're brothers like this, we haven't talked in a long time, and you're exactly right. It's almost as I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, we're all led by the same Spirit. We've got the same Father, and it seems like you're kindred and like-minded men of God that live for the glory of God, and it's always a joy to fellowship with you men.
Chris, tell us about, for those that are not well-versed in it, Athletes Abroad for Christ, and your vision for it, how you helped get it started with Mark Dewey, and how it's going today.
Well, I think, our purpose statement is basically to glorify God in the arena of athletics by preaching of the gospel and a faithful commitment to the local church. But a couple key verses that, really hit home for us as men is, and Paul said to the church at Corinth in 1 Corinthians 16, be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. It's been our heart in the arena of athletics, working with young men to develop courageous men that use their vocation for God's glory. They're men of conviction. They're men that need to take a stand and be courageous, not only in their attitudes, but their actions, and to be alert, because the world, the flesh, and the devil keep coming at you, and we want to teach young men to be godly men and to develop, pass on the faith to those in their family and their children, and as Michael said, our grandchildren, and just to be men of God that stand up with men of conviction that live for the glory of God. And athletics and life, it's sorely needed that young men become godly young men.
Boy, that's a good word. Well, you've been doing this the whole time. When you were in the dugout at that beautiful facility out on the lakefront with the porta-john and the fan at the end of the dugout there, you weren't just teaching baseball. You were teaching life lessons. And when it became obvious to me and all of us the type of guy you were, man, this was a delight to support and to get behind. I think all of us have met guys that have had an experience, a gospel experience, if you will, and through the passage of time, they give up on the race, they get weary, they stop, or something else takes them out of the race. And I just think it's a great test. And it's one thing to have the initial testimony, but I think the testimony of God's faithfulness and you being faithful. I think that's a joy for us to talk about right now, the faithfulness of God. And these are the principles you're saying. I mean, Paul said it, follow me as I follow Christ. I mean, and I think this is what you're doing with the Athletes Abroad. I think it's great.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We're trying to keep men encouraged, especially during this difficult time with no minor league baseball and Major League Baseball coming. There's a lot of young men that, have lost their way, and just like you guys talked about tonight. I mean, we're men with hope. Those without God are without hope, but we have a living hope, which is an anchor for our soul. And I think to remind these young guys that the best life is yet to come. Christ is going to return and set up his kingdom. And in the meantime, keep looking up. God is sovereign. He's in control, and his promises are true. He'll never let us go. And it says in Romans that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So all things are good. He's conforming us into Christ's image, drawing us closer to himself. And I just try to remind these men of it, because when we lose God's perspective in life, we can lose hope and get discouraged. So, the key is to surround yourself with a Paul, a Timothy, and a Barnabas, and to encourage one another and remind one another that Christ will never let us go. His promises are true, and keep persevering.
I'll always love you for the influence that you were upon this guy on the other side of the phone line and what you did for him. I mean, I've heard it over and over again, the influence and the change that you brought to Kenny and the life that you brought to he and Denise in their house. And we're always indebted to you for that. I know, Ken, you'll address that.
Kenny's such a joy. I tell you, just to see what the Lord is doing in him and through him. He's a joy to me and a good friend, and we look forward to reconnecting.
Well, it's all genuine. I just wanted to let Michael speak that, because it's all genuine to the nth degree, and want to talk more about that too, and want to talk a little baseball too. We're visiting with Chris Bando, the former manager of the New Orleans Zephyrs, very first manager in franchise history. Special time, and we'll get to the calls in just a moment. It's 504-260-1061. Michael alluded to Privateer Park, which is now Maestri Field at Privateer Park, and I just thought the way you handled that with some veteran guys who clearly weren't going to be happy with the scenario, and some young prospects coming here and seeing this for the first time and experiencing culture shock. I thought you handled it extremely well. That team in that first year was a really good baseball team, and narrowly lost in that division of Iowa. And I thought the attitude was enormously important, and I thought you really fostered that in a good way to get things started.
Well, it was a unique situation in terms of the ballpark and the circumstances, and having to walk, down from the activity center to the baseball field, and a lot of unique ground rules playing in that field with the wind blowing out. But I think it's a time, so often in the minor leagues, there's such a common bond that you all go through struggles in the minor league level, striving to get to the top, and you have to overcome. And, the minor leagues is just that. It's the minor leagues, whether it's at Privateer Park or somewhere else. And so you have to overcome to get to the highest level. And just like life, there's trials and circumstances that are unpleasant, but we're grateful for the opportunity to serve the Lord and to play and coach a game that we dearly love.
Kenny, to add one to that special season there, one time you were, of course, you were in the broadcast booth up there, and I used to sing the anthem a lot of times on the deal, and it was just awful hot nights out there. And one time after I sang the anthem, I go by and CB says, "Hey, you want to sit in the dugout? You want to sit over here in the corner?" And I said, "Well, sure." And it's one of those hot July or August nights, and he put me down by the end, and you know where he put me? Down there by the porta-john there with the big fan. And I was so excited to be in a professional baseball dugout, but after about 3 outs, I just said, "Look, pal, I'm going to go sit in the stands and get something to eat."
You sure it wasn't the odor that got you, right?
Oh, something got. I just went, what, and get out of show business? The old joke, I mean, but I appreciate it. It was a thrill at first, and then it was more than I could stand after
that. The thrill was gone pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was gone.
No question. If you'd like to join in the conversation, it's 504-260-1061. That's 260-1061. Listening online at NashFM1061.com is Jay, who's in Memphis, Tennessee. Jay, Thanks for the call and welcome to the show. You're on with Chris Bando.
Thank you very much, Kenny. It's nice to talk with you again. Chris, I just wanted to say, as a baseball fan, thank you very much for giving us some good days at the tier, as they used to call it.
Oh, it was a lot of great memories, not only at the ballpark, but the city of New Orleans in general. It was 3 joyful summers I spent there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I really had a lot of fun, and I was very glad to count you on as a friend. So I hope everything goes well for you, and thank you very much for the memories, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Oh,
thank you, Kenny.
Thanks for the call and encouragement. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Jay. Thank you. It's 504-260-1061 if you'd like to participate in the conversation. And what was really interesting, Chris, is when you got here and you brought the team here from Denver, of course, to manage it that first year, is that the Brewers had a good farm system. And a lot of those young men that you had the opportunity to coach here, right, especially in the first 2 years, ended up playing and having long major league careers. I just think about some of the names. Jose Valentin played nearly 2 decades in the major leagues. Of course, we think about guys like Jeff Cirillo and Mark Loretta and Troy O'Leary and Matt Mieske and Scott Carl. And there were a really good bunch of young prospects at the time in the Milwaukee Brewers system.
Yeah, there really was. The Brewers system had a lot of great athletes, and it is encouraging. One of the benefits of minor league baseball is you got to see future stars that had really good careers for the Brewers and other organizations. And there's a lot of talent in our system, and there's a lot of talent in the minor leagues. And that's one of the thrills and joys of having a minor league city, is that you get to get close to these guys and follow them. And part of the joy as a coach is seeing them have prosperous careers.
That second year here in 1994 with the Zephyrs, you had a team that I want to say you stole 200 bases, and you had a bunch of little guys, and we used to call it Zephyring them to death, as I recall, because you just get guys on and put guys in motion all over the place, and they just ran like crazy that particular year and ran yourself into the playoffs. That was a great managerial job, and that team maximized its ability, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. You try to obviously formulate your game with the type of athletes that you had, and we had a lot of speed, and so we had to utilize it. We had to create things on the bases and try to generate runs and try to wreak havoc and put the pressure on the other team. So it's a type of style of game that I enjoy managing, and enjoy athletes that can do situational hitting and run the bases well, and just get all that you can out of them by leaving it all on the field and on the bases.
That's a great. Hey, Chris, with the situation of this, what we're all going through right now, and MLB and what's going to happen there, and of course the doesn't look like there's going to be any AAA. You've got some guys at AAA, AA, any kind of minor league right now. You got guys that have played this game and with their parents, and they've traveled around. They've since they're 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, and all of a sudden they're coming to a point that they've never been before. Don't you think that what you do is going to be more important on a season like this, when there is no season, when you're trying to affirm young men and tell them you can have hope and you can have the word, because they've never been let down like this. They don't know what to do, a lot of them, and you've got to speak hope to them.
Absolutely, Michael. We've started a series of Bible studies over Zoom, and we've got a few groups going where we got 7 to 8 young professional men in these Bible studies, trying to remind them of the hope that lies before them, because it is a situation where they've never been through before. They're usually playing baseball or training and preparing for a season. And a particular gentleman said, it's difficult to get motivated every day, because baseball was my motivation, knowing that the season is coming, knowing that I get to play and develop and have a chance to play Major League Baseball, and now doing absolutely nothing but working out. So it's an opportunity to point them to our hope, the Lord Jesus Christ and his return. But yes, Michael, the fields are ripe for harvest, and we're just trying to get in as many of these guys, young men, together to study the Word of God today and be men of courage that live by faith one day at a time.
Chris, you may or may not be aware, because I don't know how closely you follow it, but our AAA baseball team departed at the end of last year, and there was not going to be a minor league team here in 2020 had that season taken place. The team here departed for Wichita, so it would have been the first year without minor league baseball since you started the Zephyrs up here. Of course, this new stadium was built in 1997. It's still there, and there is a sincere effort right now being made by a lot of people, quite a few of whom you know, led by Walter Leger, to bring another minor league team here. What about minor league baseball in the New Orleans market? Obviously, you're a supporter of it and a believer in it, right?
Oh, absolutely. It breaks my heart to hear that there's not going to be minor league baseball in New Orleans. New Orleans has a great fan base. It's a wonderful city. It's a wonderful place to spend the summer, and it's an enthusiastic sports town and well-deserving of a minor league team. And I sure hope they're able to bring another minor league team to New Orleans, because a lot of great memories in the city and with the people there and the culture. And of course, I gained 20 pounds every summer eating the good New Orleans Cajun food over there. But I certainly hope it does return there. I did not know that until a few months ago when I was talking about the Zephyrs and did not realize that there weren't going to be a team there this summer.
One of the other things about baseball, I certainly know that you have watched very closely and probably have some interest in, is what's going on in Cleveland right now, which is dear to your heart. I remember when the new stadium was built, and we went there. You took us there when we had a minor league night off to go see Progressive Field and see the Brewers and Indians over there. And I know it was a delight for you to see that new stadium, and it's still a nice place. And now, of course, there's the potential for a name change, and I got to believe that's probably a mixed emotion situation, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know the Indians, and the logo was meant to honor one of the first American Indians to play professional baseball with the Cleveland Indians. And yeah, it is a mixed emotion. I certainly have fond memories of growing up in Cleveland and being a Clevelander. That the Cleveland Indians were always a team of endearment, and I'm sure most of the people in Cleveland feel the same way. And it is mixed emotions, and our whole culture that we're living through. There's emotions all over high and low. So part of the transition and change in life, that you adapt, and it just doesn't seem right, but it is what it is.
Hey, Kenny, I saw a picture today of Chris and his catching, and Yaz was up in front of him hitting. Who's a good memory there? Were you a talker when somebody like that, or did you look at somebody like that and go, say, I'm just going to shut up and watch this guy?
Well, actually, Kyle Yastrzemski, I was catching behind him in his very last at bat of his career. So
wow.
Every pitch that was thrown, there was an ovation of 30 seconds to a minute between every pitch. So that last at bat seemed like eternity, but it was one of those surreal moments where you've got goosebumps going down your arms, knowing that this is Kyle Yastrzemski's last at bat of his prolonged and historic major league career. So he's one of those special players they considered an honor to be able to play against, even for a brief time. But there are so many great players that I played against in the major leagues. George Brett comes to mind, as Kirby Puckett, and just guys that were special hitters. They were just special offensive players that, it was a joy to watch because they were so hard to get out, and to see their talent and their drive, and as long as they played and as hard as they played, I'm very grateful for that opportunity I had.
Visiting with Kris Bando for a few more minutes. Of course, the original manager of the New Orleans Zephyrs, longtime major league catcher as well. When you see the game today, Chris, on the major league level, it's a lot different, I know, than even 15 years ago. Batting averages were considerably higher. Strikeouts were considerably lower. The trajectory of the game is all about launch angles and about the long ball as compared to contact, and it's really changed in the last 10 or 15 years. Is that for the good, or is it not for the good of the game?
Well, I mean, it appears that baseball fans, they like to see the long ball, and it's all about hitting the ball over the fence. I personally don't think it's for the good of the game. You come up I guess you'd call me an old school type of coach, where you're used to teaching, making contact and putting the ball in play and making sure you get the runner over if he gets on first base, and you try to generate runs, and is all part of what we instructed and the way we instructed young players to play and the way I was taught. So I think it takes away from the game because it's become so one-dimensional that I think there's a certain excitement. The more you put the ball in play, the more exciting the game is, and the game keeps moving. So I think it takes away from the game, but that's the way the game is. Guys are getting bigger and stronger. Fences are being brought in. The ball's traveling more, and the stadiums are conducive to offense. So all the teams are built around power.
Yeah. Hey Kenny, I have a fun memory back on one of those nights there. Ozzie, it was the year Ozzie was playing. Ozzie Canseco was playing, and his brother had just sent him a bag of bats. And you said, "Hey, come look at this thing." And it was like I had to pull it up with two hands. It was I felt like David trying to pick up Saul's sword. You know what I mean? And but I'll never forget that. And you said, "Look, his brother just sent him," and it was a fun. And I'd never seen anything like that. I mean, it looked like a tree. Yeah, but that's another. I'm sitting here hearing these stories, Kenny, and I'm back there again, and that was a fun night. That bat was the biggest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
It's funny. Yeah, it's certainly a lot of the big guys use big, heavy bats, and even today, I don't think there's many guys using big bats any longer. As big and strong as they are, they just try to get it through the zone as fast as they can, and Ozzie and Jose and many other players swung big bats, and I think Bobby Bonds was one of my hitting coaches when I played, and he was a big endorser of using as big and heavy a bat as you can because the less work you have to do. And I think there's a lot of validity to it. And he got a lot of our young players using long, big, heavy bats. And there's not many in the game today, despite the increased strength and power that these guys have. They're still swinging relatively small bats.
What's really interesting is that I still have my Bible, my life application Bible that you gave to me when I decided to dedicate my life to Christ in a clubhouse in Buffalo, New York, and it sits by my bedside, and that would be 26 years ago or something of that nature. So if you want to know about the impact that not only you make, but that any one of us can make when it comes to witnessing, there's living proof of it, Chris.
Yep.
It's just a joy and a privilege that, the Lord in his grace and mercy gives us those divine appointments and those divine friendships that, out of our love for Christ and love for one another, that we share the good news of the gospel, and we're prepared to live for the glory of God. And Lord willing, we're prepared to give a testimony of the hope that lies within us by how we conduct our lives. And it was just a joy and a privilege, Kenny, to be there for you, to have those dinners together after the game, to sit and talk all during the course of the year was a special joy and a privilege that the Lord gave me to invest in your life.
Well, you did it, and it made an incredible difference in my life. And then you introduced me to Buford Easley, and that forever changed my life. He was
our leader,
as special a man as I've ever met, and somebody I just fell in love with, and never would have guessed it. This city slicker guy from a pure Roman Catholic background to the country bumpkin from Mississippi with a Southern Baptist background. We became closest of friends, and he changed me forever, and it was all because of you. You got me started there, and still communicate with the family. We lost Bonnie Easley last year, and still communicate with the children, and I'm still at the church, Chris, after all these years.
Oh, that's wonderful, Kenny, and that just exactly what you said is one of the emphasis of our ministry, Athletes Abroad for Christ, is we want to encourage guys to a faithful commitment to the local church, because God has ordained the local church and has given pastors, elders to shepherd our souls and to give an account for the souls entrusted to them. And you can see the evident growth in your life, Kenny, by being involved in the local church and serving the Lord by your serving the church and the body of Christ. And I think that's another point that we try to emphasize these young men in the off season and even during the season. Get yourself in the local church and get fed and get your soul nourished, because we can be consumed with life and the game, and we need to be more consumed with the feeding of our souls.
Yep. Buford was a roaring lion, wasn't he,
Yep.
Chris?
Oh, he was one of the best pastors I'd ever sat under in preaching and teaching, and he was so passionate about the Lord. He was filled with love. He loved his flock, and I had called him continuously, even when I left New Orleans, stayed in touch with him as well, and I wish I would have stayed in closer touch, but he had a profound effect on the 3 years that I was there as well, Ken.
He was great. I went to see him the day before he got promoted, and he was in the hospital, and you know how big and burly he was. Well, I was there, and I wanted to say hi to him, tell him how much I loved him, how much I appreciated him. And those arms were not those big, bulky arms. They were very, very thin at this time. And I'll never forget it. I'm walking out of the room, and I said, "I love you." And I waved back at him, and he took that arm that was very thin at that. And I've told Ken about this many times, and he took it up and he made like a fist, and he put it up in the air, and he in a full, strong voice, he says to me, "Preach Jesus." I said, "You got it, I promise." And that was it. Those were the last words I heard. And I can't do better. Boy, that's a legacy, and I think we're all part of your legacy and his legacy. And I think that's what the gospel's about.
Amen. I remember a time with Buford in his office and talking to him about Scripture, and he says, "I want to tell you one thing." He said, "I read the Scriptures to learn more about Jesus, and then I commit my life to be like Jesus. So it's about knowing God and making him known with my attitudes and actions." And that profoundly stuck with me the rest of my life, just to know that the book, that when we open the book, we're meeting with Christ to learn about Christ and then to follow Christ. And in the meantime, during the course of our life, God is conforming us into the image of Christ. And Buford had a very simple way of communicating profound truths.
He most certainly did. And just a minute or two left with Kris Bando, so we have time for one more call. And I had to laugh when I see the name come up on my screen. But here he is, Chris, from Metairie. Here's Fletch. Fletch. You're on.
Fletch, my man.
You're on with Kris Bando, Fletch.
Yeah. I have one question. Chris, I'd like to know how much your faith was tested when that ball on opening night that Larry Sheets hit, what took a weird hop through that gate and nullified what would have been the winning run in that game.
You're sharp as a tack, Fletch. You always were. You got a memory unbelievable. Yeah, I tell you what, Larry Sheets, he was something else. Boy, he was something else. But
you had some faith testers, huh?
Oh yeah. The Zephyrs tested my faith a lot, and my faith grew a lot during those 3 years.
You had a lot of faith testers. You had Marshall Bowes, Danny Perez, Ricky Rona.
Listen to this.
That's enough to make you want to put a gun to your head right there.
Oh, so you're something, man. You're sharp as a tack over there. You know all the roster, all the players. You're bringing up some names that I'd forgotten about, but
you tried to forget about.
The Zephyrs were 5-0. Okay, we're coming off the very first road trip ever, Indianapolis, Louisville. Come home to play at Privateer Park. Ninth inning, Larry Sheets hits one into the corner. Matt Mieske is rounding third. I'm screaming, calling the winning run to come home, and what a way to end the first home game ever. And lo and behold, the ball goes into the snow fence down the right field line. And Mieske has to return to third. Larry has to stop at second. Zephyrs don't score. Buffalo wins in extra innings. You're kidding me? Ruined a perfect script. And I'll tell you what, Chris, it was all Pete Barriquet's fault, Chris.
Not me. I was praying for a win.
Yeah.
It's a kiss of death, man.
Yeah. Well, Pete kept us laughing, Kenny. No matter what the situation, you knew you can count on Pete to bring a good laugh to you. So he kept my spirits high just seeing that smiling face of his.
Well,
but it wasn't.
Well, he's still doing that with us.
It was the only stadium you could look out and see where the Pope had a meeting, though. So that at least had a little faith at times.
It's true. The stage were still there.
Yeah. It's the only field I know where I had to go over the ground rules, and you had to hit it over the second fence for it to be considered a home run. So I don't think that's ever happened in minor league baseball, to my knowledge, in any field.
And the umpires couldn't get that right because one of the fences was made a 10 if it hit it, and if it hit that ruled the other way. So
unbelievable, but it was true. Those were the days. Yeah, you hit it over the first fence, it's a double. And then you had the umpires had to try to look at it with a hawk eye to try to figure out if it had cleared both fences or not. My Lord, it was unbelievable back in those days. But we thought it was great. We didn't know any better. And ultimately we did. But it was great. And Pete, it's great to hear from you. I know Chris is glad to hear from you too. We're going to let him get away. But Chris, I want to thank you for spending time with us tonight. Thank you for enriching so many lives, including mine. And I know my wife's very grateful because it helped me become a better man. And I mean that from all my heart. We love you very much.
Well, I love you, Kenny, and Michael, and love to Denise and your families and kids. And we look forward to keeping in touch and look forward to talking to you tomorrow on our Bible study.
Yes. I will be there. Send me the invite. I'm ready to roll. Thank you, my friend.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Love you, man.
You got it. All right.
I love you too, Mike. God bless.
All right. That's Kris Bando, CB.